folks. Welcome to this edition of Wolf Watch. I'm your host, Keith Johnson. Today, we are going to be addressing some anomalies, inconsistencies, and discrepancies. Three words that hoaxers know all too well and use quite frequently. They apply these words to the final report and all of those who contributed to it, including first responders and witnesses, forensic experts, etc., etc. Of course, most of the time, if not always, they are completely wrong and have simply twisted words or taken things out of context. But nevertheless, the hoaxers are always looking for something that to them doesn't quite fit or make sense. Unfortunately, they don't apply the same level of scrutiny to their leaders like Wolfgang Halbig. So that's why today we're going to examine just a few out of kilter comments and statements that he's made over the past few years. And all of these statements that we'll be examining today, all but one actually, come to us courtesy of Deanna Spingola, who is one of the few interviewers who has actually grilled Wolfgang Halbig about his credentials and called him out on many of the absurd claims he's made. Before we go to those clips, though, I want to introduce you to a blog post which was written in 2010 by this Lake County, Florida group of conservatives who wrote a very scathing piece on Wolfgang Halbig, who was running for office around that time. There's quite a few sections here, but the excerpt I want to address today is relevant to Halbig's recent campaign to declare that Sandy Hook Elementary School could not have possibly been in operation because according to crime scene photos that he's analyzed, the school was a toxic waste dump filled with mold and unbreathable air, etc., etc. Now, I'm not going to sit here and challenge Halbig's qualifications for inspecting mold issues in person, let alone from photographs. But I would like you to check out this Facebook post on Sandy Hook tragedy, Focus on Facts. This post was made on May 11th, and this is the only place I know to date that has challenged Wolfgang's assertions on this issue. You'll find a lot of interesting things here. For instance, many of you probably have not seen this article from the Newtown Bee circa July 13, 2012, where we find out work on the Sandy Hook school roof began in earnest last week as materials for the $180,000 project were set in motion. The project to replace the school's entire roof won the school board's nod over a $70,000 offer by Barrett Roofing and Supply Incorporated to repair leaks in the roof. So here's a lead as to the source of some of the interior damage that we see in those photographs, but check this out when you have time. I'll leave you a link in the description box below. Okay, now before we read from this blog post, let's listen to this clip where Wolf gets quite emotional about the mold issue at Sandy Hook.
Let me tell you, had America seen these pictures within a week of that school shooting, they would have been sick to their stomach, because this is the most filthiest, the most deplorable. It's a toxic waste dump. And can you imagine 600 parents send their children to serious exposure of lifelong health risk? What is wrong with these people in Newtown? That is negligence by parents.
Negligence by parents, huh? Well, let me ask you a question there, Mr. Halbig. How can we blame parents when there's evidence to suggest that risk managers and people tasked with notifying the parents of these potential health risks fail to do so? Perhaps not in Newtown, but how about sunny Florida, where we come across this little bit of trivia from the blog post that I mentioned earlier? The author of this article states in this subsection, putting children at risk, according to information we obtained from Halbig himself and his files, he has a history of filing workers' compensation claims against his employers at Lake County and Seminole County schools. When we asked him about this, he claimed there was a tripping incident at Dabney Elementary, and he told us that he was suffering from respiratory issues due to him investigating mold issues at new schools. He said the district was turning off air conditioning, chilling units at night, which was causing toxic mold, and he believes he was exposed to it over a 4-year period. Now get this, folks. We asked him if he ever reported the mold to the proper authorities because of the health hazard to children and teachers, and he said, quote, "You do not want to hear about the toxic mold because it gets parents really upset. And the last thing I want to do is create problems that cannot be fixed because the rule makers are the school board members and the school superintendent. The State Department of Education has no say on indoor air quality and toxic mold issues in schools or employee work centers. The above statement by Halbig is horrific because, if true, it's put the health of Lake County's children at risk while he was Director of Security and Safety. Now, let me pause here, folks. In all fairness, I have to correct the author of this article. He was not the Director of Security and Safety of Lake County. He was the risk manager. So, slight error there, but going on with this. He obviously was more concerned about his job at the school district back then. Citizens for Better Government believes that the Lake County School Board should immediately inquire into the issue of possible toxic mold in our schools. Our concern is how many children have been knowingly exposed to toxic mold because some school bureaucrat decided to save a few pennies at night by turning air conditioners off. This is serious. Shame, Halbig, for not letting parents and teachers know. Things that make you go, indeed. Yes, the issue of toxic mold exposure to children can really come in handy when it can be used to elicit emotion, and that can in turn be used to generate revenue. Kind of like a salesman working on commission. He has that incentive to get all emotionally wrapped up in his sales pitch. But when it's his job and he gets paid either way, then the issue doesn't quite seem so pressing. Funny how that works. So basically, what Wolfgang is saying is, let's not bring it to the attention of parents here in Florida and get them all upset, but by all means, let me fly up to Connecticut, where they just had a mass murder of children, and let me start yelling and screaming at the top of my lung at the parents there about their mold and mildew problem. Things that make you go, Okay, now for our next anomaly or inconsistency or discrepancy, we start here at sandyhookjustice.com, which is Wolfgang Halbig's personal website. On the right-hand side of the page, he has his resume, which is quite extensive and extends all the way down. We'll scroll down here and, oh, look at this. We come across a picture of Wolfgang Halbig when he was a Florida highway patrolman. And we scroll down a little more and find out about his employment there, state of Florida, state trooper, 1974 to 1975. That's 1 year or less. What he says about that is that he was a state trooper, graduated from the academy in Tallahassee. He was assigned to a duty station in Miami, and he was part of President Nixon's presidential detail, I guess, as he came to visit. But yeah, folks, 1975, that is literally 40 years ago, 4 decades. Most hoaxers weren't born in that decade. As a matter of fact, a large percentage of them weren't born until the 1990s. But just to give you some more perspective on how long ago that was, folks, we were just ending the Vietnam War. Our current president, President Barack Obama, was only 13 years old. For God's sakes, the first Star Wars wasn't even filmed until a few years later. But yes, folks, a long, long time ago, lots of things have changed, including police procedure. You need to keep that in mind when you start citing Wolfgang Halbig as an expert in law enforcement. You should also understand that a state trooper in Florida is much different than a state trooper in Connecticut. In Connecticut, their duties are much more extensive. Here in Florida, folks, a trooper is a patrolman for the highways. They give out tickets and they investigate accidents. That's what they do. Okay, let's see what Wolfgang has to say about his time with the Florida Highway Patrol in this document, which is a deposition which was taken in May of 2012. And Wolfgang had filed suit for an injury he sustained. I believe it was that slip and fall that we read about in that aforementioned blog post. But nevertheless, the person deposing Wolfgang is asking him about his past employment. He asked him what he did after he resigned from Lake Brantley, and Wolfgang tells him on page 34 here that he joined the Florida Highway Patrol. Then he was asked, were you a certified law enforcement officer at the time? Wolfgang replies, not at the time. They had to send me to the academy in Tallahassee. And did you complete the academy? Yes, sir. Back at that time, how many hours did CJST require in order for you to be a certified law enforcement officer? Wolfgang says, I don't recall the hours, but I know it was 3.5 months in the academy full time, and we lived at the academy. 3.5 months, folks. I need to stop here and just point out that recruits today, those who join the Florida Highway Patrol, have to spend twice as much time in the academy, which shows you how much more sophisticated law enforcement training has become since 1974. They now have to spend 7 months in the academy, and we can verify that by going to their website. The Basic Recruit Academy is 28 weeks for non-certified individuals. It's less if you've already gone through trainings elsewhere, but for new recruits, if Wolfgang Halbig were to join today, he would have to spend 28 weeks in the academy, which is twice as long as he had to spend in 1974. So, moving on here. Okay, so you graduate, pass the test, get your certificate from CJST as a law enforcement officer, and then you started working with Florida Highway Patrol. And then Wolfgang cuts in. He says, give me the initials again. C what? The guy says CJST, Criminal Justice Standards and Training. Right. But again, it was the academy, says Wolfgang. I never heard that terminology, but I graduated from the academy, which gave me my certificate. Well, folks, it's pretty standard. I mean, it's pretty common knowledge to those in law enforcement that you get your certification from Criminal Justice Standards and Training. Okay. That's something you would know. However, hey, let's give Halbig a break because it's been 40 years. And after 40 years, you forget a lot of things. Anyway, moving on. And then you worked with the Highway Patrol, right? And that would have been from approximately 1974 until when? Okay, here we come with our discrepancy. His resume, his official resume says 1974 to 1975, which is 1 year less. Here it says 1976. So now it's turned into 2 years. Huh. And which troop were you assigned to during your tenure with the Highway Patrol? Troop E in Miami, Florida, he says. And what were your duties? I was a state trooper. Rank? No rank. Did you voluntarily resign? Yes, voluntarily. Okay, and why did you resign? Here's something that I don't think a lot of people know. He says, I was shot at too many times. And there's too many fights and broken noses, and I thought I could do a better job going back into prevention. Okay, I was shot at too many times. Well, the first thing that comes to mind here to me, ladies and gentlemen, is if he was shot at, how come we haven't heard about this from him? I mean, specifics. When did this occur? When a cop gets shot, ladies and gentlemen, that's big news. Whether it's today or 40 years ago, that makes the newspaper. That makes the evening news. So I haven't heard Halbig talk about this. I've gone looking for news articles, haven't found any. If you do come across something, please pass it along. The other thing I take away from this, folks, is that he left because it was too dangerous. I mean, that's what I get out of this. I was shot at too many times. There's too many fights and broken noses. So, too dangerous of a job for Wolfgang. However, he doesn't hesitate at all in criticizing the officers who responded to Sandy Hook, calling them cowards and they should have done this and they should have done that and they should have gone right into the school. There's controversy about that, obviously. But point being is that he talks about how he would have done things differently, yet the reason he left, according to this deposition, is that it was too dangerous. Shot at too many times, too many fights and broken noses. Interesting. Anyway, were you ever injured while working as a trooper? Other than little cuts and abrasions? Not that I recall. Well, I would think you would recall things like that. Ever file any workers' compensation claims? Not that I recall. Did you ever file any workers' compensation claims when you worked at Lake Brantley for that 6 months? Well, now we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. But point being here, folks, he's criticizing law enforcement officers today about law enforcement protocol. And in order to criticize, he has to reach back to his experience 40 years ago, yet he can't even recall if he filed any workers' compensation claims. Crazy. Things that make you go, hmm. Okay, so Wolfgang Halbig's resume states he was a highway patrolman for 1 year. That turns into 2 by 2012. And by 2014, it turns into 3 years. And for that, we're going to turn to an interview between Halbig and Deanna Spingola. Let's have a listen.
All righty. On January 22nd, 2014, you wrote a letter to the Newtown Board of Education in which you state, and I quote, "I have spent a lifetime as a Florida State Trooper in Miami, Florida, from 1974 through 1977, and then realizing that I am in the wrong. I'll read it just as that I'm in the wrong profession. When you work as a law enforcement officer in Miami, Florida, it seems as a lifetime, even if it is only 3 years or less. I was putting people in jail instead of trying to prevent them from going to jail, so I became a school administrator for 36 years, unquote." Now, you were a Florida State Trooper for 3 years?
Probably a little less than 3 years, but you know, like when you work in Miami, it's like working 3 years for each 1 year you work. You stay busy. Miami is tough.
Okay, I think I got it figured out. Right? This is Wolfgang Halbig math. I got to remember this next time I put my resume together, if I ever need to do that. Okay, so he worked from 1974 to 1975. That's 1 year. However, like he stated, when you work in Miami, 1 year feels like 3. So although he quit in 1975, it felt like 1977. Get it? Started in 1974, 75, 76, 77. That's 3 years. Uh-huh. Things that make you go, Okay, let's move on from his experience with the Florida Highway Patrol and move on to his claim that he is a FEMA certified incident commander and instructor. And this clip also comes to us courtesy of Deanna Spingola.
Deanna, you know what I didn't tell David Garrity on his show on February the 11th? You know, you always withhold something. But I'd be glad to fax this to you after we hang up from this conversation. I actually have the certificate in 2006 that I took all of the class. I actually am an instructor for FEMA on incident command. I mean, I have the certificates. I got FEMA certificate.
Oh, I'm sure you do.
I have the certificate. I'm an instructor, and you're telling me that I don't. I teach people this class, and you're telling me I don't know?
Wait. You said they didn't follow policies. I'm just asking you. I'm just telling you what the policies are according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security.
I'm an instructor.
Okay, let's delve a little deeper into this certificate that Halbig received in 2006 and he said he would send along to Deanna Spingola. For that, we're going to go to her website, spingola.com, where she has an extensive write-up on Wolfgang Halbig, including his certificates. This is the one that we're looking for. Yes, indeed, it is from FEMA, Emergency Management Institute, and it covers the National Incident Management System. This was awarded to Wolfgang Halbig in April of 2006. This is the certificate he's referring to in that interview with Deanna Spingola. But look at what it says here, folks. National Incident Management System on Introduction. This is the course number, IS 00700. Let's take a look at that and see what it is. We go to the FEMA website, and we find that right here, IS 700, a National Incident Management System on Introduction. Course overview. This course introduces and overviews the National Incident Management System, provides a consistent nationwide template to enable all government, private sector, and non-governmental organizations to work together during domestic incidents. Course objectives. At the end of this course, students will be able to describe the intent of NIMS, describe the key components and principles underlying NIMS, describe the purpose of the NIMS components, including preparedness, communications, information management, resource management, and command and management, and lastly, describe the purpose of the National Integration Center. This is very important right here, folks. Note, this course provides a basic introduction to NIMS. It is not designed to replace incident command system and position-specific training. No prerequisites to take this course, and it's 3 hours long. Folks, this is a 3-hour course that anyone can take online. It's a basic introduction to the National Incident Management System. That's it, just an introduction, bare bones stuff. It does not prepare you to become an incident commander, nor does it certify you to be an instructor. For that, you need more intensive training and certification. Again, we go to FEMA. Their website here shows that this is the bottom of the barrel, this kind of training, this IS 700. Low type here, high type here, position specific. That's where you get into your incident commander training. And you need at least, from what I have been told, an ICS 300 and an ICS 400 advanced. This course provides training and resources for personnel who require advanced application of ICS. This course expands upon information covered in ICS 100 through ICS 300, and we won't go into that. But to become an incident commander, folks, you need position-specific training. These courses are designed to provide state and local level emergency responders with a robust understanding of the duties, responsibilities, and capabilities of command and general staff members. So, folks, I did confront Wolfgang Halbig in a debate that was moderated by Dave Gahari back in July, and I told him, all you have been able to provide to us as far as training with FEMA is this IS 700. You don't have any of these more advanced certifications, and he was unable to provide me with anything more. He kind of sidestepped the issue and went off into some other rant. But folks, unless he's hiding something in a bottom drawer, I've yet to see anything that qualifies him to be an incident commander at a mass casualty incident or an instructor with FEMA to pass this information along to other first responders and individuals who you would see at the scene of a mass casualty incident. Okay, let's just do one more clip here. I got plenty more, but I like to keep my videos under a half hour whenever possible. And this one pertains to Wolfgang Halbig's knowledge of the final report. And folks, if you consider yourself a Sandy Hook researcher, there's some basic things that you need to know. And Wolfgang clearly doesn't know these basic things. Have a listen to this.
Did you read all of the reports in Book 6?
Yep. I don't know what Book 6 is.
If you had read the reports, you would know what Book 6 is.
I don't even look at the number of the book. I look at each section.
Okay, those come.
What you're talking about, and I'll answer you. Tell me what you're talking about. Ask questions. I'll respond.
I asked you a question if you were familiar with Book 6.
I don't categorize it in books. I read
the report. The report comes out if you look at the website. That's cspsandyhookreport.ct.gov. At the top, it says CFS 12007045559. It is a total of 720 megabytes, includes 9 books for a total of 740 PDF files. Those books have all of the original reports that all of the officers filed. They are signed by the officers. The officers tell you exactly what they did, when they did it, at the time that they did it. If you had read the report, you would know exactly what I'm talking about when I refer to the 9 books.
Exactly what she said. I can't add any more to that. So I'll just leave you with this. Going back to that deposition from May 2012, this comes to us on page 144. The gentleman deposing Wolfgang Halbig says, "You mentioned several times, and I want to make sure I don't forget to ask you about it, that you feel your memory is not the same now as it was. Is that something you're claiming as an injury or an issue as a result of this, a lack of memory or a poor memory, I guess?" Wolfgang says, "I would say yes. I think I have a poor memory. I discussed that with my family doctor. He said, 'Wolfgang, you had a concussion.' You know, he tested my eyes and the bump on my head. Dr. Baxley, who's my psychiatrist, wanted me to go see someone that does memory, to be treated. And as I said, I apologize, but I have a hard time seeing a psychiatrist. I mean, I was a state trooper and I saw a lot of bad things, but I just have a hard time with the word psychiatrist. The guy says, all right, and what type of memory problems are you having? And this is important, folks. This is Wolfgang's reply. I cannot recall names. I can't remember facts. And the big one is I do workshops all over the country and I can't remember my program. I'm actually watching videotapes right now of all the programs trying to see if I can refocus. I just can't retain it. Now, if that don't make you go, then in my humble opinion, you're scratching the wrong side of your head. So that'll do it for me for this edition of Wolf Watch. Until next time, this is Keith Johnson signing off.